Welcome to Youthology Live. I want to deal this week with one of the most recent questions that I've received when I'm talking to youth leaders across the country. Now, maybe you don't think about this very often, but this is a very important youth leadership question, and that is, what do we do with leadership meetings? Listen, let's assume we are having leadership meetings and then start from there, okay? Let's assume we are already doing recruiting of leaders and we simply want to increase our training and leadership development. Well, that's where the youth leadership meeting comes into play. I'm going to give you 6 key elements or key ingredients that will help you with your youth leadership meeting. Number 1, make sure that the frequency of the meetings is an advantage and not a disadvantage. Okay? Let me explain that. If you meet too little or too much, it can be a disadvantage. But if you meet just the right amount of time, it can become an advantage. Listen, that may mean that you need to meet weekly or bi-weekly or monthly. It depends on your setting. If you're not meeting on a regular basis, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, if you're not meeting on a regular basis, you're not growing as a team in all of the areas that are required to build a healthy youth ministry. A well-timed youth leader meeting creates planning, training, relationship, all those things that it takes to require time on task together. Did you hear that? Keeping time on task together. Listen, what should be clear to every youth leader is that effective meetings will create clarity, maturity, vision, and unity, movement, right? Every meeting should contain the following few more elements. Listen, here's number 2. Dedicated time of building relationships with the team. It is important that you have refreshments and meal preparation. That's critical. Depending on your budget, you can do something that is, lighter or more formal. The point of the meal, though, is not just the food, okay? The point of the meal is very spiritual, and it's important for developing deep community. You know what happens around the table. Some things happen around the meal table and not just around the meeting table, okay? There are things that happen around that meal table that cannot happen at a meeting table, right? And that brings the kind of movement we're looking for, and unity and clarity and definition. And so listen, make sure that everyone gets involved in the planning of the relationship time. This is where relationship building can create a more effective experience. If you need to, have the leaders rotate and take control of this part of the meeting. Maybe it's at the beginning of the meeting. And they can do different planning and different assignments or crowd breakers in this moment. And it involves leaders. Okay, listen, number three key ingredient to successful or value add youth leadership meetings. Sharing wins. Listen, sharing wins can be elite culture building. Everyone wants to be around something that is exciting and growing. And by sharing wins, this creates that kind of experience and ultimately the atmosphere of your youth ministry, the culture of your youth ministry. When the team gets together and shares what God is doing through them or in them, it brings group health, doesn't it? When other leaders hear about how God is using another leader on the team, it creates in that person who's hearing this win, accountability and faith. But listen, how does that happen? Look at it this way, okay? That value add in the meeting, sharing wins and story, creates accountability. when a leader maybe has not been connecting with students for various reasons, right? And they hear how another leader is creatively connecting with a student, it creates in them the faith in the possibility that, you know what, maybe I can do it too. Maybe I can connect the same way that leader's connecting. Maybe somebody's struggling with, a certain kind of how to pray with a student, or whatever, those kind of things. Maybe when to go to a extracurricular event at a school. When I hear of other leaders doing that, what a great way to challenge each of them. Number 4, every meeting should have a time of calendar planning and assignments, right? This is the administration or the organization. Do you know there's a gift of administration? Discussing calendar or assignments can bring great clarity to everyone involved. Obviously, an annual calendar should be in the hands of the leaders, and it should be, something that every leader has on their phone or in, documents. But every meeting that we get together, we should be planning for those immediate events that are happening in the moment, right? It just creates more success, more organization. Maybe you need to assign leaders to a small group of planning, or maybe you need to solve a problem in the youth service by moving leaders, next to a student, or the calendar and the assignment time could be a place to do all of that, right? To solve the problems and assign people to solutions to the problems. Maybe we don't have enough leaders at the next event, right? We find that out in the leadership meeting, and then we don't have to worry about an event not having enough leaders to make it happen. This is a great place to solve problems and ask questions of the team about, the kind of things that are going on, around the annual calendar in the youth ministry. Hey, number 5, development of the team is a critical part of effective youth leadership, especially in that meeting. In your weekly or biweekly or monthly meeting, if there's one critical thing that I've seen lacking in youth ministry today, it is ongoing leadership development. So we cannot just do adequate leadership development in a quick meeting 15 minutes before the youth service and share a little devotional. That's not youth leadership development. That's not adequate enough. We cannot do effective youth leadership development quarterly, 4 times a year. Youth leadership development takes a systematic and comprehensive plan to prepare a team to lead the important ministry of next gen in the church. So many things come up in culture, and so many things come up in, throughout the year that we need to keep people time on task involved. So here are some important topics that we're talking about when we talk about youth leadership development. Personal leadership development. Number 1, personal leadership development. Number 2, teen generational traits. 3, sociological characterization to help leaders relate to the teen culture. 4, basic counseling skills with teen topics in mind: family, dating, identity, social media, at-risk behaviors. 5, role playing. Wow, I love to role play in a leadership meeting and get conversations with leaders and teenagers that could range from how to lead a student to Christ, or how to talk to students who are depressed or suicidal. Training your leaders takes a lot of dedication and time, but it takes that stress out of being a youth leader, doesn't it? Finally, number 6 here in this area of team building and training, basic natural skill sets such as communication, personal life discipline, national and social manners, things that are going on. Every team should cover these basic principles, prayer and reading and fasting and giving and simplicity. The leadership development it's broad, it's systematic. Listen, consider going through a book together as a team, or watching a video series from Alpha or TED.com, or Feed.com, or even having guest speakers in from the community. We did that often, where I'd have a superintendent of a school district or an important teacher in that area, or even like a coach that's popular, right? Guest speaker. Okay. Number 7, the final element to produce in a youth leadership meeting is the spiritual aspect of prayer and worship. This may be the greatest value add. Hopefully this goes without saying. When we talk about prayer and worship, listen, I don't mean opening or closing a meeting in prayer or simply singing one song together, or like most youth ministries will do, right? Most youth ministries will have a quick leadership meeting before every youth service. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about planned, organized prayer, worship, fasting, communion together, reading the scriptures together. This can create a presence-based youth ministry and not just a program-based youth ministry in the core of the people who will shape the culture of the youth ministry for the students. Prayer and work, that spiritual discipline and the spiritual dynamic creates a culture in the core of people who are around you. These leadership meetings, oftentimes when I've been in them, were interrupted by the Holy Spirit in my home or another leader's home or at the church. I can remember the youth team on their face in the youth room praying for the students for the entire youth leadership meeting. Oh man, that is irreplaceable, right? Think about that. I think that's a value add that most leaders would not want to miss. So get creative with this. Get creative with the prayer time and the spiritual time. Do prayer walks together, dividing the roster of your leaders into prayer teams for the students, and taking time for intercessory prayer for area schools, sending the leaders to the schools. Man, so many different ways that we can add value to the youth leadership meeting. Let me finish with this. To make the youth leadership meeting more successful, bring others around you with varying organizational gifts. Maybe you're not sure how to plan it. Get somebody who has the gift of administration to do that. Get another leader who's involved in an organization or manages at an organization, or a teacher, right? Let them be involved in the planning of the meeting. Allow the leaders to own it. Because we don't want leaders just to be seated at a table. We want them to be heard at the table, right? By moving the meeting around to different locations. Here's some fresh ways to end. You bring creativity and variety to the meeting. We had our meetings at a local school, football field, at an airport, in the youth room, at homes, at the beach, in the mall. There's so many great ways to bring some, freshness to the youth leadership meeting. All right, listen, if you're going to create anticipation for the youth leadership meeting, it will take work. Okay, it doesn't happen overnight, but it takes that kind of dedication to add value to a meeting that people really want to come to. Not a board meeting, right? A board meeting. No, we want to make it worth their time, right? And we want to bring greater effectiveness to the overall youth ministry. We want to bring health to the overall youth ministry, and that requires successful, meetings that are unmissable, for your leaders. So, hey, anyway, thank you for joining us for another Youthology Live. You can find us on all the socials by clicking on the link tree, where you can listen on iTunes and watch on YouTube, or you can read all of these leadership posts that we do, read the script on the website. All right, so hey, thanks again for joining us. Have a great week.